Hello, I'm the Badger Reborn, and today's video is something special. I recently participated in a group podcast session hosted by the Black Tower podcast. It also had guests the Gleemen and the Way of the Leaf. The Black Tower pod set it all up and got us together for several hours of fantastic Wheel of Time discussion and arguments. We went through our favorite unpopular opinions regarding characters, themes, or the TV show, and debated the merits of the topic. We split the episode into 2 parts, and I further split it in half again, so I'll release it in 4 parts. They're still long, but I love creating it, and I think you'll enjoy listening. I had a blast debating with these guys, and I've put a link to each of their groups' information in the video discussion below. Go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already, and at the end of the video, check these other guys out as well, and subscribe to their platforms, YouTube or podcasts. They each bring something really special and unique to the table. The Gleeman has really intellectual, kind of deep dive takes, whether it's longer or sometimes just kind of bite-sized discussions into different various Wheel of Time topics. The Way of the Leaf is really quite funny. They do the puppets each time, and it's a discussion, sometimes spoiler, sometimes non-spoiler, of the Wheel of Time books. The Black Tower podcast has been going on for a long time, and as you can probably tell from these videos, they go really deep dives into the books with a lot of kind of philosophical takes, looking deeply at characters or themes and that kind of thing. They're all fantastic, so check them all out. I hope you enjoyed the 3rd quarter of this fun discussion, starting now.
Good evening and welcome everyone to part 2 of our special air YouTuber panel, what we're calling it, where we've got a bunch of wonderful human beings with me and Andrew. If you caught part 1, you already know what we're doing here, but if you are popping into part 2, let's give you a little taste of what's happening. We've gotten a bunch of great people together who all do content mostly, if not exclusively, based on the series The Wheel of Time. And we have brought them together to make a collaboration video extravaganza so that we can all talk about a series that we all seem to love. With us today, we have a bunch of fun people, but before we get to who they are and what we're going to be talking about on this particular part, as I said, this is part D of the series, we need to throw on some happy protection to make sure that all of the people watching at home don't ruin their day by finding out things that they shouldn't yet know. So, Andrew, can you hit them with that info?
I mean, I can tell them. I'm not going to hit them because that's assault. Kind of go to jail for that, and I like not being in jail.
That sounds like a you problem.
I mean, yeah, maybe one day. We'll see. Or not. Hopefully not. So, the following episode contains spoilers from books 1 through 14, as well as the prequel, as well as the Big White Book of Bad Art and the Wheel of Time Compendium from Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. It is a fantastic series. But if you have not read the entire series, potentially including the prequel, and if you've read the whole series, technically you've been exposed to all the information from the Big White Book of Bad Art, or what's it actually called? The World of Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time, or something like that.
That's what it's called.
It's like the hardest name to remember out of like every single thing associated. Or the Wheel of Time Companion. You would have already been exposed to it, whether you realized it or not. So we can't be held liable for that. So don't try to sue us for it. But yeah, if you haven't finished the whole series, you're at risk of being spoiled. You are a free sentient being with your own free will. So by all means, proceed at your own risk. You have been warned.
Indeed. Thank you very much for that wonderful information, Andrew.
I was just kind of hoping you would keep pouring until I stopped talking.
Oh, I didn't want to do that. This glass isn't actually large enough for an entire bottle of wine.
Oh,
that would
I was
be
just
ridiculous.
gonna. Your cup runneth over, and if you
Oh,
stop,
no,
like, you're a quitter. Do you want to introduce the lovely people we have with us there, Daniel?
Indeed, I would love to do that. So first, we have our wonderful little friends from the Leaf Cast. Y'all want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your channel?
Wait, give me a second. The applause is deafening.
Yeah. Guys.
Okay.
Guys, come on.
All right.
Stop it. Stop,
Okay.
please.
Insert applause.
Thank you,
.exe
thank you.
or .mp4. MP3.
Okay. We are the Leaf Cast. I'm sorry. We are the Way of the Leaf, and we are a reread show right now. We are on YouTube and we are on podcast. You can find us on Twitter at leaf_cast. Our Discord is a fun place. We got a lot of crazy things. We have a channel called Well Turned Calves, where everyone takes pictures of their own calf. We got, channels for pets. We got everything. Anyway, so our Discord is fun. We are happy to be participating in this. Thank you so much. And this is the round 2. Round 1 was great. I can't wait to see what round 2 brings for us.
Awesome. Well, we are happy to have you here. Thank you very much. Guys, you already got one round of applause. Stop.
Guys,
We know they're awesome.
Guys, Daniel's
calm down.
talking. Let Daniel talk. People.
All right.
People.
All right, no, please, everyone, stop.
All right, thank you.
All right. And second up, we do have the lovely, the talented, the wonderful Badger Reborn. You've seen him on the green. You've seen him in part 1. Now you are seeing him in his new form back once again, reborn into the handsome body of this gentleman here. This is the Badger Reborn. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Guys.
Yeah!
You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Badger?
So distracted by this well-turned calves thing. I'm gonna find that out.
Same here.
Yeah, I'm the Badger Reborn. I'm a content creator on YouTube, and I'm really excited to be back and continue this conversation with all of you guys. But I have a YouTube channel talking about the Wheel of Time TV show and books, mostly full spoilers. Some videos have no spoilers. Recent video that I made was examining whether transgender characters should be introduced in the Wheel of Time TV show. And I have a lot of other great videos as well, along with a Twitter and a Discord, both called the Badger Reborn. So check me out.
Nice.
You should take, and if you ever do a completely like no holds barred uncensored series, like on Patreon, just be called the Badger Out of the Bag.
I love it.
Good.
I do have
That's
a
good.
Patreon video talking about the boobies of the Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
There you go. That should be episode 1, the Badger Out of the Bag.
I like it.
The boobies out of the bag? I don't know. Awesome. Thank you very much.
Booby? Like the birds, of course, because
Yeah.
nothing else
clearly.
would make sense.
Yeah,
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Blue,
You have to workshop that one.
Yeah, no, I like it. We'll talk. My people will call your people.
Okay.
It's cool. So thank you very much, Badger. And last, but certainly not least, we have our wonderful representative here from the Gleemen. Now, normally there are 2 of them, and you may have caught, well, probably should have caught, Drew and Vance both here with us in our part 1. But here in part 2, unfortunately, only half of the wonderful duo could be with us. But, Vance, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your partner and the Gleemen channel?
Sure. So we are the Gleemen, me and Drew. Sadly, he couldn't make it today due to previous obligations. So we miss you, Drew. Wish you were here.
Obligations.
I know, right? It's almost like he has a life or something outside of the Wheel of Time.
True poo.
So,
True
right.
poo.
We are on YouTube at the Gleemen, and that is capital THE space Gleemen, plural, not man, just so everyone knows. You can find us
there
on,
are 2 of them.
There are 2 of us, exactly.
Not to be confused with the male vocalist group from the show Glee.
Right, or the 1970s Italian prog rock band, also called the Gleemen, which was the only thing on YouTube when I searched that name. I was like, well, they're not
Hey.
around anymore, so I guess we can use it now.
Until they are.
I was about to say,
Dun, dun. So we also have Instagram and Twitter, mostly where we're out there doing shameless self-promotion and interacting with the lovely Wheel of Time community online. So we are in basically everyone's Discord around here. We do not have our own, but if you are a member, just go ahead. Feel free to add us at any time. We'll try to get back to you when we can. But we hang out in a lot of these lovely folks' spaces, and they so graciously provide.
And they add a lot to those spaces. So thank you very much
And if
for
you-
both being here and being on Discord.
And if you want your own Discord, let me know. I am fairly decently versed in creating Discords, and you can
Okay.
turn over ownership to people. You don't
Okay.
just because I make it doesn't mean it's mine forever. So
Right on.
More than
right on.
willing to help out a
Until
fellow
he
creator.
takes it from you later because of the bylaws you didn't read.
You didn't read the contract. Your soul and all of your followers are mine.
Ooh.
Also, your second-born child, because fuck the firstborn.
Well,
Right,
that's not a
right.
problem.
Always
'cause I'm not
entitled
having kids.
assholes.
Right. That's just
problem
the
for
that's
me.
just
No
the
kids.
first that's just the you
It's
know
a
what's
parental training
practice.
ground. The first
practice
child,
round.
yeah.
Yep.
It's a
Child
given.
one is
You
the
always get a
sandbox version.
do-over, right? You have a first child, and
It's
you
the
ask for a
sandbox.
do-over.
The last one's always the best, I think.
And as you guys may
Yes.
have also realized, Josh is not here with us is either.
Who?
He
Who's that?
just,
Is
I
that
just forgot.
is he part in the Black Tower?
I think so.
Weird.
Really?
I don't
Never
know.
heard of it.
Hadn't
here
seen
last
him in
time?
a fortnight.
Yeah, I think he. I mean, he was here for like half of the part one.
Yeah, he kept having tech difficulties.
Internet
Anyway.
connection slam.
Josh is drinking to all of our cumulative successes here, but he has a family and a life outside of Wheel of Time because
Cheers.
he's
I'll drink
weird
to
and
that.
lame like that. It is a beautiful family, though. I mean, give him credit. Which everybody's family is beautiful. You guys have beautiful families. I've never seen them, so that might sound kind of weird, but I have seen Josh's family, and it's a beautiful, fantastic
He's
family.
definitely never seen your families. He doesn't stalk you online.
Mm.
Your families are a mystery to me. I
I'm
have
having a
never
flash-
seen them even once.
I'm having a flashback of Haggard right now. Like, I shouldn't have said that. Should not have said that.
should not have said that.
You're a
But-
wizard, Harry. I should not.
You're a
have-
hairy wizard.
Awesome. But as you guys know, if you came in for part one and you are now on part two, and as I have sort of stated a little bit before, we've gotten these lovely people together, the two of us. There were three, but now the two of us from the Black Tower, the two gentlemen from the Way of the Leaf, the Badger Reborn, and our one lucky member of the Gleemen. We have gathered us together to talk about one of those things that comes up pretty often when you are talking to people who know anything about any series, and that is unpopular opinions. We all have them. And never stop them. You will walk out into the Twitterverse and find out that some of your wonderfully held opinions are actually terribly unpopular. It happens to the best of us. And tonight we are dedicating part two of our unpopular opinions. As you might have seen if you caught part one, we did get to 4 of the 8 members of the panel and bringing up their unpopular opinions, and gave everybody a little bit of time to respond. And now we are back to the other 4 members and their unpopular opinions, and then getting the takes of the 5 other people who don't necessarily share that unpopular opinion as to whether it is a good unpopular opinion, whether it is a bad unpopular opinion, whether it is actually an unpopular opinion or not. So definitely stay tuned. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I know that we did last time, and so here we go. I think we're kicking it off with
me.
Yeah.
Not intentional. We just stopped at halfway, and I just happened to be number 5 off of the original list. But very, very quick recap for those of you. This is a round robin style thing. Daniel pretty much has explained the entire thing. The way the more logistics of it work out is each person will explain their unpopular opinion, and then we'll take
And
about 10
defend it.
minutes. Yeah. Think about, well, you just state the opinion and why you believe it, and then everybody else talks about their interpretations of it, what they think about it, whether they think yay or nay at the end. If it's something that we can kind of cumulatively vote on, agree or disagree, we do. After about 10 minutes or so of cumulative discussion about the unpopular opinion. So without further ado, let's get into what I think is personally one of the most intriguing unpopular opinions. Not to toot my own horn of Valir, but I really like my opinion because this is something that I've talked about in a couple Discords a while back. And it's about the nature of the one power, about how channelers use it. And the way I see it is the one power does not create things the way we interpret it. It's not like Harry Potter magic where what you're doing with your magic creates something entirely new on the world, but rather, because it's been confirmed that everything that we see, whether it's sentient, alive, dead, grass, air particles, whatever, each thing has its own thread and the pattern. So my unpopular opinion is that the one power is not so much an actual magical ability to create things, but rather it is a mechanism with which individuals have been granted access to alter threads in the pattern to be different things. Whenever you create fire, you are not actually creating. Yeah, you are not actually creating fire. You are changing the associative air and wood or whatever molecules around to be fire. And then, in the instance of like starting a campfire, it takes over the natural progression of altering those threads as it would. As wood naturally burns, it thread in the pattern changes. From wood to charcoal to ash to whatever from there. Because I don't know, I'm not that smart. So, with that, the strength that we see people measure themselves and others in, whether they're male or female channelers, isn't really so much of how much of a power they can actually hold, but an interpretation for the human brain of how much change they can enforce on the threads of the pattern around them. So the stronger you are, is you have a greater accessibility to change weaves or threads of the pattern beyond you. And that the weaves we see and the stuff we see is just the human brain rationalizing and interpreting how we actually affect the pattern around us rather than creating something entirely new, which I think leads validity to the way balefire works, to where you're now changing a thread of the pattern to just no longer exist. So that's pretty much my thought. It may not be the most well fleshed out one in terms of how I just put it out, but yeah.
Well, there you go.
Well, let me pick up my brain for a second.
I'm kind of hedging on Robert Jordan's love for physics with that.
Yeah, there's a lot to kind of break down with that. I appreciate what you're saying for sure. With the power, so we have that the males can do fire and earth. Isn't that what it is? Earth,
Yeah.
wind, and fire. Yeah,
They're typically stronger in fire and earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they can do fire and earth. The females have access to other things. We have
air and water.
Air, water, and spirit. Right.
Spirit's supposed to be pretty even for both. Air and water for female channelers and earth and fire for male channelers.
Okay. Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm still trying to pick up my brain here.
Oh, dude, it's fine. Take your time.
Yeah. No, go ahead, guys. Anyway.
What is a structure that we're going to go in a structured?
Yeah, round robin.
Respawn, correct?
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if you would like some time, we can skip you and go back. That is on the table, but it is definitely sort of like structurally set.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, let me go ahead and just yield my time for now. If I can. I need to process just a tiny bit.
So I think that me popping in here then is probably a good, Andrew and I have actually talked about this a little bit because he has talked about it a little bit on our podcast before. And I like the way that it's formed based on, again, Robert Jordan has definitely talked about in interviews and whatnot, his sort of appreciation, at least, for physics and whatnot. And definitely the idea that, no energy is actually created or lost, it's just changed, that we have as far as the laws of physics in our world, I think do sort of play a part in the way that magic works in the Wheel of Time. I will say that I've always disagreed a little bit with it, just because I definitely think that the way that it's described to me suggests that it's not just changing, the cognition of things. It's not just changing, oh, this is now fire. It is actually sort of creating a different thing out of nothing. And Well, the one power is sort of this river that flows, and there isn't, you're not actually creating the one power. You're not actually like, whatever. You're just grabbing a piece of it, and you have a certain amount of that river that you can hold within your body or within your psyche or whatever you want to call it at any given time. I actually think that that is a tangible amount. I actually think that it is sort of a river with water, and the amount of water that you can have flowing through you is actually a thing. It's not just sort of your brain trying to figure out how to explain it. It is sort of actually an explanation. And so I do actually really like the theory. I actually really like the way that Andrew puts it, and I actually really like sort of the thought process behind it. But I have to admit that I am on the other side of it, where I do think that things are created and lost. I actually do think that the way magic works in the world is that there is this flow of stuff, and you have a certain amount of that you can bring into yourself at any one given time and use, and that it's not just changing things in the pattern, it's actually weaving a new pattern, if that makes sense. You are changing the way that the threads are woven, but you're not actually changing the threads themselves, kind of thing. That's my take on it. I as I said, I really like that description of it, and I think it's really cool. And if Brandon Sanderson or Harriet came out tomorrow and said that is how it worked, I would be fine with that explanation. I just don't. When I was reading it, I didn't get that, and so I am on the other side of, it's not just it's not how much of the pattern that a channeler can touch and how much of it they can just, actively change. It is actually a force that they are using, which is then changing stuff, but it's actually like, it's less direct than what Andrew is.
So you're basically saying that it's more of an alteration to an existing thread rather than a transformation of the existing thread.
Yep. It basically takes wherever that thread left off and changing the way that it's woven into the future, if you will.
You're altering,
but it doesn't change anything about the thread itself. Mm-hmm. The thread is still the thread, and it just weaves differently now than it would have naturally without the power, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Let's not all speak at once, gentlemen.
Right, Drew, but Drew is
that was the time that we set aside for Drew to talk, but he's not here. So
hey, Vance, do your best Drew impersonation.
That's impossible. So I'll just be myself.
Perfect.
So
even better.
Right. Yeah. So in terms of what Andrew said, I kind of like that he's bringing in like law of conservation of mass, and the whole no creation or destruction of energy concept into the entire use of one power. I also liked the idea that it is your will enforced upon the threads of the pattern to force them to change. However, I do disagree with it. And the reason I disagree with it is that the source to me is an infinite field from which all creation derives its ability to exist from, correct? So as far as that is concerned, since it is an infinite pool of energy, when we access the power and the weaves are woven from the power, that is actually new matter or new energy created from that infinite field into reality, if that makes any sense. So while honestly, on the scale of what a human channeler can do in the Wheel of Time, it's going to be pretty negligible, like without some of the song real that we see within the world. I do think that there is ever so much a small creation of new weaves into the pattern, but they're a lot of the time they're transient. There are transformative weaves, I do believe, that do alter the threads, but that's in addition to having things creating like fire and like if we were to weave like whips of air, possibly that might work better if you're using the existing air than creating new ones. But the fire thing, I think is just wholesale energy creation, unless it comes out with an explanation that it's not, which I haven't seen somewhere. To me, that's how I've always viewed it.
So let me make a concession with that point. Whether you alter it or transform it, the amount of matter present isn't going to change. The
Well, yeah,
alteration
that's
is where you're forcing the matter that already exists to change because of an outside force. The transformation is where you're just, so the alteration would be like you add heat to a log and a chemical reaction occurs and it bursts into flames and consumes
right.
the oxygen, puts out carbon monoxide, carbon
That's
dioxide, that
just
kind of stuff.
science with extra steps.
Well, yeah,
No.
but the transformation is pull a little bit from Full Metal Alchemist right here, where there's an equivalent exchange where you're taking away wood molecules and adding in like char molecules that are on fire. That's actually a bad explanation, but the transformation is your outside force isn't causing a reaction to make it change, but rather it's changing what is into what you want it to be.
Mhm.
Whereas the alteration would be the adding heat to a log and that causing the log to combust. So at the end, either way, the result is still perceivably the same. It's just the kind of underlying physics mechanism that changes how it happens. It's one of those like it's almost like a splitting hairs argument, honestly.
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, to be honest, I haven't thought that much about the nature of the one power, so I'd have to think on what you said a whole lot more. To
Dude, you've read the Wheel of Time. How could you not have
not
spent
yet.
a ton
Hold
of
on,
time
no,
thinking
no,
about the
no.
one power?
In the way,
I
he
could
is
tell you
talking
a
about it.
whole, that's my story altogether.
If I expounded upon because this is just you can ask Daniel, this is just a small part of my overall theory about how the power works. If I expanded upon this, nobody else would have time to talk
Right.
It's
right.
true. He's
because it
done
has
a few
further
times.
implications.
Right. And
Well,
it
not
Which
gives
is
during a
fine. That is
recording.
not me suggesting that it was bad. I've enjoyed every second of it, but it's a long time.
Yeah, yeah. For sure, for sure. And for me, it's just I'm not as familiar with the intricacies of how you're viewing it and everything. We basically got a 3-minute primer on what you actually think about it, so it's a little bit hard to come up with a detailed response to it. I need to go research and write an essay and then get back to you.
How I win, I play both sides.
There you go.
Evil.
Awesome. So Badger, I think you're next as far as response in the round robin.
Did we skip Ryan, or did I?
Am I wrong? Is Ryan before you?
Okay, guys. To be honest, we have no order. We're just relying
Okay,
on us all
okay,
being
well,
kind to each other. All right.
I'll go then.
We
because
had
I
an
don't want
order
Ryan
last
to take my
time.
points.
And I deleted it because I didn't think about it. My bad.
Oh.
I was thinking that Ryan was after you, so please don't think that I forgot you, Ryan. You are next.
I
You
went
are
first.
on deck.
I thought I always went first, so I expected to kind of go last. Because, anyways, yeah, I'm good.
That
I'm
works.
good.
Well, I'm the only one with the actual order, so I'll keep that to myself. Just keep doing what we've been doing. But yeah, so I will go so that Ryan doesn't take my
Rude.
points.
Stop. Stop being prepared. Don't do that.
I know.
Time aside.
So first off, I was impressed that you mentioned Harry Potter, because I don't know how much of a Harry Potter fan you are, but in Harry Potter, Gamp's law of elemental transfiguration says that you can create things from nothing, except for a few exceptions, like food, which seems kind of consistent with the Wheel of Time, because you can't create water that you can drink yourself, which has always kind of confused me, because I'm pretty sure you can create fire that you can burn yourself with. So I feel like there's some inconsistencies, or at least maybe something that I haven't quite grasped on the physics level.
Maybe not, because you can burn oxygen. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah,
you
so
can
know,
burn
I
oxygen.
don't even know what that means. But
Like
I
the ozone layer can legitimately be set on fire. It's one of the big concerns that they had to figure out before dropping the first atomic bomb.
Set fire
One
to
day.
the ozone.
One day. I can't
Sorry,
wait.
I only interrupted because I felt like it might add to your statements.
Yeah, no. It does, I think. But I have one definite problem with what you said in terms of the mental ability to make change, and that's kind of the amount of power that you have. I was really on board as you were explaining, until like the one thing that hangs me up on it is when you said that would be your amount of power. The one thing I thought of was that when someone is stilled and then they get healed by someone of the same gender, their amount of power they can channel is weaker. But there wouldn't really be any reason that their brain can now like conceptualize a significant amount less of change. And even like in my opinion, like their imagination has kind of been expanded. Their something they never thought was possible is now possible again. And so that doesn't seem consistent, and especially someone being healed by someone of the opposite gender, their brain now being able to conceptualize the same amount as before, that just doesn't quite seem consistent with your theory. So I'm going to have to say the brain part throws me off. The rest of what you said I think can make sense, but I think there is just sort of a well amount of power that each person can channel. That's based on other factors besides your brain or your consciousness or something, or those factors.
To be fair, my only retort would not support my argument at all. That's one I'd have to think longer on. So,
Can I
Awesome.
ask a clarification? For instance, could Moraine, when they were leaving and going to Berlin, she created a fog across the river.
Mhm.
Could she have done that in the IO Waste?
Ooh.
So if I'm to side with my theory, then yes. I mean, well, what we're arguing here is it's a perception thing, or from the resources from the book of, can you create something that is or is not there? And my theory basically says that yes, you can. That you can alter a piece of air to be a piece of dirt, because you're changing it. Now, we can get deeper onto it, whether there's limitations on, because ultimately I believe that it's all the creator allowing you to affect the pattern, and that's what this is all measured, and it gets further. But based off of what I've just said, then yeah, I'd have to say that yeah, you would be able to, because you would be able to split the oxygen and I just forgot chemical composition. Like I was an expert before. But you would be able to alter elements of the air and elements of the ground, and you'd be able to coalesce the water elements there and increase them by altering air, nitrogen, pick another atmospheric gas, and you should be able to change them into water. Yeah.
Yeah, H2O.
Because you can burn hydrogen, I believe, or a certain compound of
Hydrogen is
hydrogen.
incredibly flammable. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I know you can burn it,
Yeah.
but there's a process. You see it in the movie The Martian with was it Mark Zuckerberg?
Matt Damon.
Yeah, Damon. Sorry, wrong
Mark
person.
Zuckerberg is the
Mark
person who owns
Zuckerberg.
Facebook.
Yeah, I didn't say I was all here mentally. All right, so
He
but yeah,
owns Mars now.
He might have meant Jesse Eisenberg, who plays Mark Zuckerberg. And
Ooh,
holy
no,
crap,
nice.
is he more charismatic than the actual Mark Zuckerberg?
yeah. So
Jesus
anyway,
Christ.
use that movie as an example. You get what I'm getting at. Is that he does a process by which he burns hydrogen after creating the hydrogen gas from dripping some acid on some seemingly solid. I think it was like sodium something. I don't know. I'm not a chemist. That does in turn create water. So with hydrogen ever present in the atmosphere, I would say yes, that you could create the mist in the IL waste.
Can I jump back
Have
in
to
here?
change
and
more
push back?
stuff, so it would require more ability to affect more threads of the pattern.
Yes, Badger, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you maybe in theory would be right, and perhaps the channelers just don't know how to do it. But we see two different instances where someone needs to create a water source. Rand in the waste specifically tries to create a lot of water, and he has to do it by pulling water up from the ground where there's a big
Mhm.
well of water underneath the surface. And then later on, much later, Avienda's trying to put out a big fire in a house, and she has to pull it, just like drag it out of a river that's nearby,
Mhm.
and they can't just make it just like squirt onto the fire.
So the question there becomes, because a lot of this is reliant on your limitations by your ability of the human brain to interpret how you are using power, because it is taught that you are creating these things, you are creating or moving whatever object it is. So is it something that because of the way they're interpreting the world, they can't think to alter the air atoms to be pure water? Or is it something where that is impossible and they just can only move what is already existing? So my theory purports that with the proper mindset, and this goes a lot into Rand's pipe at the end, where I'm a big proponent of the idea that lessons learned from Teleron Riyadh is how you can will changes in plays a big factor into this. I see it as a bit of a training world for the ultimate usability of the one power in the world. Because naturally going around, you're like, I need water. Where can I find water? Most people don't think, well, let me just change the air into water. A lot of people think, well, let me find a water source and use it. So
Yeah, that's right.
that's the best answer I can give to that.
does anybody here think that in a previous age, like say the Age of Legends, that they referred to this whole process as weaves? Maybe they referred to it as atoms or right? Like maybe do we think that that's even how they thought about it?
Alchemy
I
Because
to some extent.
I mean, so I have just one little thing I want to say about it. I actually have literally always thought that this is what it was all about. I thought there was a law of conservation going on, and I thought that the channelers were just pulling from a finite source of matter and energy, and well, not matter. I mean, just a finite source of energy to do what they're doing, and they're basically just altering, in my mind, atoms and electricity, basically. But what Vance just said about how what they're really doing is they're pulling from an infinite source, which is fascinating because the space-time and continuum is supposed to be infinite, matter and energy is supposed to be finite. If you're pulling from an infinite source and bringing it into a finite process, that's where I think Vance kind of tripped me up. I literally always thought of it this way. I thought Andrew was correct when you were saying, I'm like, yeah, that's matter of fact. I think that's how he thought about it. But then once Vance brought in that other thing, I thought, wow, okay, now I don't know how to put those two together.
So if Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time universe operates off of the laws of physics, where energy and matter can neither be created nor destroyed, then a pool of energy would by necessity be infinite, because as energy is used up, other energy becomes available, thus de facto making it infinite. It might have at any one point a measurable amount as it stands, but if you can't destroy energy and you can't destroy matter, it only changes form, then it would be de facto infinite.
Yeah, and the one thing about the Wheel of Time that I kind of always go back to as far as this particular thing, this particular theory, is balefire. And certainly I'm not saying that that there is no possibility that this works a little bit differently than I'm thinking it does, or that I've always, or that they explained it in the series, because again, there are definitely people in the series who explain things somewhat regularly that then end up being sort of proven wrong later.
Well, the unreliable narrator
information, and we're like, that's not actually how that works. But the fact that balefire is a weave that then eliminates something not even just now, but before, definitely at least suggests to me that things in the universe of the Wheel of Time can actually be destroyed, and that it actually became such a problem that things were being destroyed, and in such a large degree and to such a large change in the pattern, that I would actually say in the world of the Wheel of Time, it at least strongly suggests to me that one of two things is happening. Either it was just a problem that so many things that were matter were being changed to energy so quickly that it really fucked everything, or that things were actually being destroyed, and that there wasn't the conservation of mass and the conservation of energy. And so that is sort of one of the things that I lean on as far as from my reading in the Wheel of Time, it definitely seems to work differently than our laws of physics. And that it's definitely doesn't seem like a situation where it's our laws of physics just being described in a different way or anything like that. It's definitely an actual active difference of, I like the way that Vance put it, of that like infinite field that people are actually creating from and whatnot. That's sort of my response. And again, I'm not saying that it's still not possible that is an opinion that is, very supportable with the source material, but from my reading of it, I definitely got a different idea.
So let's hear what Dan has to say, because I think we've technically gone over the time for this topic. So let's hear what Dan has to say.
Great topic.
It is a good topic.
Maybe we'll do another episode and we'll pull people in to talk about the nature of physics and the one power in the Wheel of Time. I didn't honestly expect the discussion to be this long. I didn't.
I think there's two important parts. One is the balefire, where I mean, if we have a transfer of energy, where does it go? We acknowledge that it all disappears and it goes back in time a little bit. It rips that fabric of pattern. There is no transfer per se. There's an erasure, which I think
As we
kind
perceive
of,
it,
yeah, as we perceive it. We may not know where that energy goes, but as we know it, it revives people from the dead. I mean, it's it's a pretty powerful thing. So there's that, and also the whole if you were in a barren desert, could you make a fog or not? And I'm not really sure if you could. It seems like I had always pictured it more in the Avatar sense, where you are water bending, where you are air bending, and you could create fire. And I'm down with that. I understand that. I'm not really sure what spirit defines and how you access that in nature.
Bloodbending.
Nah, it's the spirit world. Come on, man.
Yeah, it goes, so just in
Grandma?
general, I had always seen it as being a manifestation of something physical, even on a molecular level. But if there is no physical water, it would be very hard to make fog. It was, I mean, Rand was feeling the cool mist on his skin as they rode, and this fog was hundreds of, well, I would say hundreds of leagues, let's say, or pace. I don't know. I don't know what this. Come on, guys. But I do think, and my other point real fast is that I always, when Moraine described the flow as a river, and that they were the water wheel that just kind of rode and captured some of that. And I always pictured your limitations as far as what your bucket could hold, more or less. And most people have kind of a tiny little bucket, but when you get like 8 of them in the circle, you're able to kind of do some things. But a lot of people have bigger buckets that can swing more. And so I've always just used that water wheel and the river analogy. This is the first one we were given in the Eye of the World. And so I've always just like held to that when thinking of the one power.
I think my favorite new image is just who's the wise one who can barely channel, it's Sora Leah, right? Who can barely channel anything. But like just having her like in the waist and just like looking at everybody and like being all, and then just picking up like just taking out this tiny little cup and just like dunking it in the water and just tossing it at you. It's fucking adorable. I love it.
There's so much more I could say. There's so many points I want to answer what I believe the answer is on, but I can't because we have time constraints.
Because we'd be here for another 40 minutes and then we wouldn't get any.
So is this something that we feel that in its current state? I don't want to say this is absolutely definitive of it, but based off of what has been expressed and the arguments against, I would say for, but that's just me.
No, the rhyme was,
or not entirely just me yet. So is this something that we think we can take a vote on as expressed currently in this conversation, whether we agree or disagree? Because it sounds like everybody agrees that the theory is at least cool to entertain, but maybe not that it's the way things work. Or is this something we think we shouldn't vote on and wait until some point in the future where we can actually have like an entire episode about the nature of the one power and what it actually means to wield it?
So personally, I'm going to throw out there that I think that this is one of those topics that we can't really do a vote for, because I think that in the books, at least, there isn't truly enough evidence either way to really say one way or another. I mean, I know that all of this is based on opinions anyway. It's called unpopular opinions for a reason. But at the same time, I feel like all of us are so much like 6 in one, half dozen in the other, that like it would be
you need
hard
more
to,
to make a
vote.
Decision.
Exactly.
More.
More
Right.
evidence.
I don't classify it as being unpopular. I think it's a deeper dive into what's going on.
Right.
And
I
so,
would agree with that.
yeah, I don't challenge it at all. I think it's an interesting conversation. If
I would say I flat out disagree with the mental
makes up your strength. I do think that part isn't consistent with the books. Although it's still a cool theory as
I
part of the
think
theory as well.
I think what I said on that might have been slightly misinterpreted because I wasn't directly correlating your will to your ability. More so of a creator granted access to affect the power.
Okay.
But that falls into the bigger discussion. So it sounds like we need to have another episode, at least those of us here now together, and do another collaboration in the future talking about the nature of the power. And I will come prepared with as much of this theory as I can written out so I don't forget it.
Cool.
That'd be great.
But for now, rumor has it that Brother Dan here has an potentially unpopular opinion to bring to the table.
Guys, I got a binder full. Hold on.
Oh God. A binder.
All right.
Wonderful. Topical, Dan.
Kiss my shiny metal ass. All right, so
I'll make my own wheel of time with blackjack and hunters.
Yeah. I'm going to challenge some of the fandom here. So when I look at most popular characters, we have Matt, we have Rand or whatever, and then we have Nynaeve, right? My opinion, it's too long didn't read opinion, is that the two Edmund's Field sucks hard, and I'm going to defend it by describing Nynaeve. Okay, so what they have is they have a wisdom who is 26 years old, who holds a lifetime position. She goes around with a stick, and I'm going. I have it on my phone. I have it on my phone here. All right. So the stick is described. The stick in her hand was thick at one hand and a slender switch at the other, and she was liable to give a flail to anybody she thought was acting the fool, head or hands or legs, no matter their age or position. Okay. So we hear that she tries to hit Senbui with a stick. Senbui's on the dang village council. This is like trying to hit a senator with a stick. But
South Carolina,
not the worst idea.
But not only that
has happened.
But someone who is able to be voted out. This is John Roberts of the Supreme Court who can't get voted out hitting senators with a stick. She has a position of power. She is an angry woman who has always been combative to men, has always been judging things, whether this is women's circle business or village council business. This is what the Two Rivers and Emmonsfield in particular breeds. She is super, super conservative. And I'm not saying politically, I'm saying she is devout for the most part with her stout Two Rivers wool and her, she had that braid long after Egwin was like, yeah, I'm free. That braid was a shackle. Hell, fuck that. And threw it away. And Nynaeve was like, no, hey, and she had these things. She was a channeler that would potentially live for about 200 years, maybe. So the Two Rivers, Edmund's Field, would be stuck with this lifetime position. And sure, maybe she could heal things, but she'd also beat the crap out of you with her stick. She would walk around angry the whole time. She needed to go travel. She needed to find land. And I think that she picked land because she had this intense animosity towards Moraine and wanted to take something from her. But that's a separate. What? Hold on, but however, let's just stick to Nynaeve in the Two Rivers. She was horrible. She was a bully. She was aggressive. She was violent, and she was adding to the regression of that village.
Dang. Boom. There's a lot to unpack there.
I'm going to need to refill my drink on that one.
Yeah.
Well, go do that. I'm going to go ahead and take this one first because technically I'm the next person.
There you go.
And I'm not going to yield my time.
Please.
No, to be completely honest, I actually agree with you. For the most part, I actually am with you on this one, Dan. I'm torn in the Wheel of Time because Nynaeve is such an important character, and because later on, I want to say in the last, starting in the book 8, and then really coming down in the last 3 books, I think she does actually turn into someone who is very successful and who really does temper a lot of their bad traits. But that does mean that you spend, at minimum, 7 full books watching someone who is a bully, watching someone who is overly conservative and really just imposes their will on other people, do that in many, many, many different situations. And while I definitely think that, again, this is a regressed time, it is not, medieval, but it is definitely Renaissance as far as the time period that we're in. And so going ahead and talking about it as senators and judges and things like that isn't totally appropriate, just because we are in the super modern era where it's a very different form of government. It's very progressive and things like that. And judging the Two Rivers or Emmons Field with our current governing climate, I don't think is totally fair. But at the same time, again, I do agree that Nynaeve is not a good wisdom. I actually think that at the start she is really bad for that village. And so I absolutely agree that Nynaeve is a huge liability and a huge problem in her initial iteration. And so I actually don't think that is particularly unpopular. I think, as I said, she is incredibly integral to the plot, and she is incredibly integral to other people's growth. And that she does actually have her own arc that does come to fruition. I could not agree more that for most of the series, I think that Nynaeve in and of herself is a huge problem. She is a liability.
So I raise my little fingy there. Because what I want to address exactly what you're talking about, and not saying that Daniel wasn't, because part of me can't, because I wasn't here for the whole thing, because I needed more rum in my life. If I look at it from exactly what you're saying and only evaluate Nynaeve as a character as we see her in Amon's Field before she shows up completely unwanted in other places, as far as we know, which is fantastic for her and her character development, by all means. I don't think you could say the same thing now, as I slap my mic, about the Nynaeve we see at the very end versus the Nynaeve we see at the beginning of the series.
And let me be clear, I'm talking about Emmons Field in general. If she never left to travel, she would have remained a horrible person for the rest of her life.
Agreed.
Trash.
I 100%, absolutely, unequivocally, without reservation, agree.
Okay.
Because outside of Amon's Field, or if it was only her bubble in Amon's Field, there was nobody there to challenge her, because anybody that challenged her was interfering in women's circle business.
And got beat with a goddamn stick.
Yeah, and got beat with a stick. Now, don't get me wrong, the absolute threat of violence and absolute violence is no way to conduct a government. No government that ever has done that has ever survived long. Survived for a short while.
Tarts throwing swords out of a lake is no way to do government.
I didn't vote for you.
I'm being repressed.
This is the violence inherent in the system. The violence inherent in the system.
Yeah. So the Nynaeve that we meet, and that's part of what makes her ultimately an enjoyable character for so many, is you get to see that character transformation from this is what needs to happen. Oh, you disagree? My stick disagrees with you. Beat. And it's not, I mean, that's a police state. It's not something that you can tolerate in the modern world, in any modern world that has advanced beyond that. You can't really blame a world that's the best they've known, because they don't know any better. But Amon's Field subjugated. I hate to think what it would happen to Amon's field, subjugate it to a Nynaeve that was never challenged, that has this 26-ish year old mentality of, I'm the youngest ever. I have to prove myself. I have to keep going, and I'm going to make them listen to me, whatever. So part of it, I think, and Vance, yeah, you're next. I think part of it is that mentality of, I'm young, I have to prove myself, and I have to deal with being a woman in a town that is 50-50. The men run it, the women run it, and at the end of the day, nobody really knows who actually makes the full-on decisions, because they think they're playing each other, and they're actually both playing each other, and somehow they survived this long, and I don't fucking know how it happened. Anyway, but yeah,
Luhan.
but yeah, it's the honey cakes that rule the entire town. But yeah, so subjugated to a Nynaeve, they see things that happen later on in the series, arguably, no, not arguably, would have still happened. Amon's field would have been very different. I would like to think that at the end they would still come out surviving, but not nearly as well as they do, because Nynaeve just has a ton of character growth. She might be 26, but it doesn't matter if you still act like you're 16.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Talon was like, yeah, you should go out. She should be out finding men, flirting. And I mean, he said it kind of misogynistically, saying that
Kinda.
pretty slip of a girl.
Kinda.
But
No,
Vance,
Nynaeve needs a Rumspringa. She
But he had a
absolutely
point,
needs a
yeah.
Nevinsfield Rumspringa.
Right.
all right,
Right.
but y'all, Vance is next.
All right, so I agree with the fact that Emmons Field has a little bit of cultural regression, and I think that's intentional on Jordan's part to show how backwater it is once we leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is a little bit played up for the sake of a caricature, at least within the first book. Obviously, we get a lot more development on that as the series goes on, but it is a slightly like caricatured village at the beginning. My point I have is, you said, well, Nynaeve's a channeler, so she would live for like 200 plus years. If she ever left, she would not have lived that long, because she would have died. She would have died within like the next 5 years, because she wouldn't learn how to channel as a wilder.
But she already passed that point. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that she
Yeah, I
actually
think
would
so.
have lived for the whole like amount of time that an Aes Sedai normally
Mhm.
does, or God forbid, not
yeah.
God
Give her
forbid,
120
Wilders-
or that the kin live, for example, because they're not
Yeah.
subject to the oath rod.
Mhm.
But she did actually pass the channeler puberty kind of thing
Mhm.
in
That's
terms
She
of the
had her
fact
first
that
touching.
Yeah,
yeah,
she
she had her
still
first touching.
wouldn't-
She almost died, but she did actually survive touching the source for the first time. And so she might have burned herself out. She might have done a lot of different things with the power. But I actually disagree, because I think it's well explained that she had actually passed that point where she was either going to die or not going to die, and she was on the other side.
Interesting.
She even looked younger than her age, it's pointed out, which I think is kind of that beginning of
Okay.
that thing.
That's interesting.
I
I
actually
didn't.
agree with
I
that.
didn't read it as that way. I read it as that she
Oh.
would have another opportunity to basically channel the power and then kill herself somehow.
Well, she
Moraine even talks about other wisdoms around, like asking her about the other wisdoms around the area who were young and died. Right? Like they have examples of these
Mhm.
women.
Oh, there's a risk, but then don't we
Yeah.
meet some like wilders who are pretty old, right?
I mean, it's everybody. If
That
you
is
can
true,
channel,
yeah.
you always have the opportunity. And if anything, I would say channelers themselves are more at risk for it when they lose control of their emotions, which I think is why the Aes Sedai enforce
Mhm.
emotion control so much. That if you lose
Right.
it and you pull a loose Theron and create Dick Mountain, you're going to die.
Right.
But
Well, so,
as somebody that's a wilder, that it's only really coming out, they're not conscious of what they're doing, and it's only coming out, like with Nynaeve's case, like, I really want to save this person, I love this person, because at her heart, Nynaeve is a very, very good person.
Mhm.
Yes.
So there will always be that opportunity. There could be a time where she tries so hard to save somebody that's, she could have a Rand moment where the
Mhm.
person's already dead and she's like, no, 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 and she draws so much unknowingly that she dies. So it is
Yes.
possible that within the next 2 years she dies. It's also
Mhm.
possible that she barely touches the power and she doesn't die for 120, 130 years, and she's a miracle,
okay.
and she becomes Methuselah of Amon's field.
Right. Okay, that's fair. And thinking back to it, I think it was Moraine who did tell Nynaeve that, and it could have been a little bit of Aes Sedai trickery there, right? Like, hey, this is why you need to go to the White Tower. And it's like in the back of her head, ooh, I've found two of the strongest channelers in freaking hundreds of years.
If you don't go, maybe you'll die.
Yeah, right.
Someday.
So there could be an element of, like we brought up
It's
earlier,
not a lie.
unreliable narrative.
She always says the
Unreliable
truth,
narrative, so.
but the truth that you hear might not be the truth that you think you heard.
Right. So.
Well, and Nynaeve had healed Egwene before, and that's how she was able to track her somehow. So that sort of force power, one power healing had occurred enough that there was a tracking device apparently kind of implanted. So she has like thrown her juice around. It wasn't just herbs. It was mojo that she kind of weaved into Egwene without even knowing it, but she did heal her with the power, I would assume.
I no longer wish
we're
to be at this water park.
We are going to flip the script just a hair here because we're technically back on the other order. And Ryan, I'm sure that you and Brother Dan have talked a little bit about this. I'm sure this didn't come out of nowhere, but what are your thoughts on this particular theory?
Well, Dan's theory actually included Matt as a character that if they never left Emond's Field, we would hate them. Like, imagine Matt as an adult who never left Emond's Field.
He is kind of insufferable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we needed him to be that way. But I mean, I don't think he had good parenting. I think if he never left those environments, he would never have been challenged to. I mean, he was such a culturally accepted, loser. Anything was happening that was going wrong, they instantly just thought it was Matt, even if he didn't do it at all. So under those, I mean, that's a tacit, communal oppression. Like you are now identified, and even if you're trying to do good, your motivations are going to be misinterpreted. So he had to get away to, become, the great person he is. And I think the same with Nynaeve. I actually love the theory. I think it's more just kind of like a thought exercise, like what is Emond's Field really like?
Like the state of nature of man. It's a thought experiment.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, I am a thought experiment.
You're a lovely, fantastic thought experiment, sir.
You're a fist and some felt. What are you talking about?
Fist and felt. All right.
Badger?
Yeah. So.
Ryan.
Go on. Yeah, I mean, Badger probably has some real strong feelings about whether or not like he would appreciate a 40-year-old Matt grabbing him and doing whatever he wants to get attention.
Threatening to punch kids. Yeah. Where does that end? Yeah.
I'm sure that Badger has very strong feelings on Matt and that particular sack.
Badger.
This is. I mean, let's get at it. Really, Is this the origin story we're gonna learn right now?
Yeah.
I'm gonna steer away from that. I think just to keep what we can keep in the podcast. I do have some strong feelings about the theory on the whole, though. Especially like coming after Nynaeve, it's gonna get my hackles up. So I gotta respond in a more moderated way than I would like to, which would
bring it.
Just
bring
be
it,
claws out.
Bring it.
I think one thing though with Nynaeve, she's definitely conservative, but I kind of wonder if it's not so much that she herself is so conservative as much as it is that she's insecure and she holds on to something that she sees as stable. Or a bit of stability that she can stay the same and that she can kind of cling to when everything else in the world is changing around her. And that just sort of is the thing that she latches onto until she finally realizes, like, I don't need to hold on to this anymore. Which brings up kind of the bigger point of her development. And I think it's definitely a fact of the series that at the beginning she's pretty immature and not a good leader in the village. But I also think Andrew mentioned that she's a great person, and I think you didn't go far enough. She's maybe the best person in the entire series in her, like, in her heart, that sort of type of thing. I see those faces.
Right. Yeah.
She's near the top anyway.
Yeah,
But I
I'll
think
give you that. She's near the top. I wouldn't
near
say
the top
the
at
best,
least.
but
Near the top at least. So
Not
I
even
think
top
if she
Top
were to
five.
stay in
She's
Evansfield,
not even top 5.
oh my goodness. Okay, regardless, if she were to stay there, I think not only was she thought of as being young, she actually just was an extremely young wisdom by any wisdom standards. So I think it would just be kind of a natural progression of her being a good person to learn those leadership skills. People in the village respect her more as she continues to do that position, and her to grow into that role where she's no longer thumping heads, except for Sinbui, maybe, and more using logic and persuasion, and just the influence that we see older and wiser and more respected people in the series use to get their way, and Nynaeve as the series goes along as well.
Yeah, I struggle with that a little bit, and mostly because let's look at how she accesses the powers through anger. That is her block. That the more angry she is, the more she's able to do on a magical level. It seems that she is in the first few chapters maintaining that anger in order for her to be more effective. And so I do give her a pass for that. However, when she dealt with Tam, it was really the sparsest amount of empathy. I didn't really see her as more empathetic. And in fact, she kind of snapped at Rand saying, do you think I wouldn't do something if I could? And that was, to me, I gave her a pass because she had to keep her anger up like the Hulk in order for her to cure more people. But I certainly, I don't see her getting past that without guidance. So she would have been an angry person her entire life in order for her to be more effective in her healing and her job.
No, and also
I'm gonna
I
step
do
in.
want to throw out there real quick that, like, again, I'm not suggesting that Nynaeve can't grow in Emond's Field, but if you look at all of the people in Emond's Field, they are pretty stuck in their roles that they were from a younger age. Senbui is still seen as how he is. The Congers, the Coplins, the Luhans, the Alvirs, all of them are pretty set in their roles. And so it really does seem like Nynaeve probably would have become more cemented than become more empathetic and become more whatever, until many years down the road, when no one had known her other than the wisdom, and nobody had known her as a little girl. And by then she's already so stuck in her ways, she's already so stuck in her habits, she's already so stuck in the Hulk that she is kind of insufferable for the rest of her life. Again, I'm not saying that that's the only way that it plays out, but it is definitely kind of human nature-y to, once you get comfortable in this is who I need to be when you're 26, and you're still doing it by the time you're 36, and you're still doing it by the time you're 40, by the time you're 45 and people are starting to give you a little bit of leeway, you're already so set that it doesn't matter that people are giving you leeway. You're still who you are when you were 30.
And it's a lifetime position, so you can do whatever you want anyway.
I'm going to step in here.
Anyway.
Moderator privilege here. Because we got 15 minutes before a certain individual has a hard out for this recording.
Yes, sorry.
So we're very quickly, I believe the overall way to synopsize the theory or to give an overview to it is that had Nynaeve remained in Amon's Field and not left, that she would have been horrible for the village. Is that fair?
And likely would have.
Nope. Is that the theory, Dan? Does that surmise it?
I would say that, and that Emond's Field breeds this sort of thing.
Yes. All right. Yeah. So we're going to take a vote here. So if you agree, let's go ahead and raise a hand where we can see it.
I don't like it, but I'm going to go with it.
Oh, that is the first total victory.
I got a quorum.
Now, to be fair, we do need Drew and Josh to watch this or hear this at least to give it 100% quorum from this. But of the 6 of us represented here right now, that is the first unpopular theory.
High five.
That seems like it's more popular. Oh, yeah.
Wait, are we losing? Does that mean you lost or won?
No, I won. I win.
I think
A
that
little
means you
bit
lost.
I was
Take
That
supposed
it
means we all
however you
said
wish.
that's not unpopular. We love
Yeah,
That,
yeah.
No, that's
Everyone,
what means you
everyone
lose.
liked it.
it. Yeah, you lost.
But
It's like
I
Come
don't
on.
like it.
So this is for sound to help Andrew edit things so that files are with files.
helps if I can see
I
your
don't know why.
hands.
Yeah, I was,
Yeah, you're supposed to show
All
the
right,
hands.
say,
I'm like,
Stop.
oh,
Stop. We're gonna cut all of that out. We're gonna do it again with
Blooper
the
reel.
claps visible.
That wraps up this section of the discussion. Finally, check out my other videos, including the other parts of this discussion. Subscribe to my channel, and I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to help me create more Wheel of Time content, I have a Patreon, and I would love it if you would join.